Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So I'm not going to say that I'm surprised by everything that happened this week. Sure, I expected the future album bomb, but I also expected that it would be a little more muted than ones in the past, and I seem mostly correct about all that. But beyond that, this is the sort of week that I did expect would eventually come in 2019, where the new year begins to start shoveling away the last, although note that none of this guarantees said new year is any good, we'll have to see. And spoiler alert, a lot of it really isn't. But in a pretty striking display, this first came to light in our top 10, where we've actually got a new number one, another one. In this case, a number one debut that I'll admit a little bit surprised that she pulled it off. 7 Rings by Ariana Grande. Now, I'll get into the song a little bit more in depth later on, but it should be no surprise this song did as well as it did. Huge YouTube rollout in sync with massive sales and streaming. It looks like Ariana's team has finally nailed down the release formula to get her second number one single. Even if it might not stay there, she's got the radio push to keep it close to that conversation. And make no mistake, this is bad news for Without Me by Halsey, pushed back to number 2. Muscle back on sales and streaming, even as the radio momentum holds up, even though it's had some diminishing returns by the end of the week there. Now this takes us to Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee at number 3. And to be honest, I'm not sure whether it'll get the traction in order to challenge again, because despite consistent stats in all other categories, the radio has been up and down all week. Now this takes us to Thank You Next by Ariana Grande, recovering a spot up to number 4, mostly on good sales, but its inconsistent radio should be a little worrisome, especially as it seems like 7 Rings is cannibalizing its radio traction, which gives me the impression that she might be reaching the point where she just has too many singles in circulation, which is kind of worrisome. Now this leaves Sicko Mo by Travis Scott at number 5, which held steady in most categories, but did see the airplay start to slip away. And on that topic, High Hopes by Panic at the Disco fell down to number 6 for much of the same reason, finally hitting its radio peak and only holding its spot mostly thanks to consistent sales. And along the same lines, Happier by Marshmello and Bastille went down to number 7. It's got the consistency of all channels in order to fall slowly, but it is gonna fall, that is for certain. Now all this is fortuitous for Wow by Post Malone up to number 8. Yeah, sales are a little weak, but streaming is on board and radio is finally picking up speed. Again, I see this sticking around as much as the stuff above it starts collapsing, and all of it pushed back Girls Like You by Maroon 5 featuring Cardi B down to number 9. Again, the only reason it's still in the top 10 at all is because YouTube and radio haven't killed it yet. And finally, clinging on to number 10 on streaming alone, we got Drip Too Hard by Lil Baby and Gunna. Thankfully, looks like its time is nearly over, it's gonna be gone soon. And on that subject, are Losers and Dropouts. Not a lot of big ones in the latter category beyond She Got the Best of Me by Luke Combs, but we did see Fine China by Future and Juice WRLD fall off, along with Bad by XXXTentacion and Blue Tacoma by Russell Dickerson. But we did see a fair amount of losers, so let's start with the big ones. Natural by Imagine Dragons went down to 50, Best Shot by Jimmy Allen went down to 60, Consequences by Camila Cabello fizzled out at 72, and Uproar by Lil Wayne continues down to 59. And on the note of expected losses, Talk to Me by Rich the Kid and Tory Lanez also continued down to 94, and off the debut we saw Nights Like This by Kehlani featuring Ty Dolla $ign skid down to 88, along with the expected sputter for Saturday Nights by Khalid and Kane Brown down to 75. Yeah, Khalid didn't exactly have a great week, as his collab with Billie Eilish, Lovely, went down to 82, but then again Billie Eilish might have had it even worse here, with some of her lowest lying songs falling off the Hot 100 entirely, and When the Party's Over going down to 87. Anytime Interscope wants to release that debut album would be good, thanks. I don't like how her momentum seems to be stalling out. But on the list of songs where momentum wasn't really a factor, we had Star Tender by A Boogie with the Hoodie featuring Offset and Tyga going to 80, Pure Cocaine by Lil Baby running out at 89, Electricity by Silk City, Dua Lipa, Diplo and Mark Ronson down to 90, and Roses by Benny Blanco, Juice WRLD and Brendan Urie at 97. Yeah, we were all spared that song becoming a hit. Thank God for it. Now, given we got a pretty big list of new arrivals, we didn't really get much in the way of gains or returning entries this week. Hell, the only one in the latter category is Imagine by Ariana Grande back at 99, and I'm guessing that only came back on residual impressions because of her new number 1. And as for our gains, look, 2 from Future with Crushed Up to 43 and Jumping on a Jet to 57 as expected by the album bomb, and Twerk by City Girls featuring Cardi B up to 29 because I would put money on this becoming a huge hit, especially as we head into the spring, which I'm okay with as I mostly like the song. I hope it does well. But speaking of Future's album bomb, not quite big enough that I have license to ignore it, let's get into our new arrivals and start off with number 100, Call the Coroner by Future. I got a white and a black girl that look like an Oreo. I come through, popping it off, call the coroner. Oh look, for some ungodly reason, we're starting off this with the worst song off of The Wizard. Seriously, this is a song where Future can't even articulate what an Oreo looks like, and follows it up with lines about throwing cash in the air like a volleyball. And that got me thinking whether or not he's referring to a serve or a bump, the latter being probably more likely because of the motion, but also one where you're hitting the ball, not throwing it, Future. But really, that's just the stupid lines. The more egregious and offensive ones are where he makes it clear that he's back to using drugs amidst lots of brand name porn for a song with only a single verse. Yeah, the piano melody, it sounds okay, but is there anything more revealing on this song than a reference to Mardi Gras chains, flashy but ultimately cheap and disposable, like this song? Next. Number 98, Face My Fears by Hikaru, Utada, and Skrillex. Oh, let me face my fears. Okay, so there are 2 songs on this list this week that genuinely surprised me, and this is one of them. Mostly because when I reviewed Hikaru Utada in the summer of last year, I had no idea there'd be any crossover attempt made for the United States market. Now, to catch you up on those who haven't seen that review, she's a Japanese-American singer-songwriter who is widely considered one of the best-selling J-pop acts of all time, especially throughout the 2000s. And then she went on hiatus for several years before making a comeback album in 2016, and now this with a single release with Skrillex for Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, full disclosure, I was a PC gamer, I never played Kingdom Hearts in any capacity, so I can't speak to how well this song might fit in with the games, but as a song on its own, I'm not really crazy about it. I'll freely admit that going to the English version first might have been a mistake, especially given how weird the meter of her verses and piano lines tries to fit against Skrillex's grainy, overcompressed groove and synthesized vocals, but even switching to the version with more Japanese verses still doesn't fit all that well. Like 2 song ideas that were inelegantly mashed together, and that sure as hell does not flatter her vocals. I don't know, it's okay, but I've definitely heard better from both artists, and I don't really expect this to stick around beyond just Kingdom Hearts fervor. I don't know, we'll see. Number 96, Girl by Maren Morris. Don't you lose your head, oh, everyone's gonna be okay, baby girl. Okay, can somebody please tell Nashville programmers that it's completely missing the point to plug the conspicuous holes on country radio with Maren Morris when she's not gonna make country music anyway? Yeah, sure, her voice got some twang and that is a guitar behind her, but what about Greg Kurstin's overweight percussion and pushing a flimsy synth makes this country instead of a pop soul fusion like we could have gotten from Kelly Clarkson or Demi Lovato 2 years ago? Hell, it even has the by the numbers self-esteem anthem callbacks. Look, even when I didn't like Maren Morris all that well and a lot of her writing, it was at least more distinctive than this. So yeah, this is not precisely bad, but it absolutely is forgettable and pretty mediocre. Send it to the pop stations, Nashville, you're not getting a pass with this. Number 95, Murder on My Mind by YNW Melly. AK-47s, Mac 11s, Glocks and 9s, and all these pussy niggas hating, trying to knock me off my grind. So am I the only one who just saw this guy come right the hell out of nowhere? Again, maybe I'm not keeping my ear to the ground enough to hear yet another MC come up through SoundCloud projects, especially as he's been putting up projects since late 2017 in between stints in jail, and somehow got a Kanye West cosign, more on that in a little bit. But he's got 2 songs that charted this week, with this being the first, and yeah, I kinda see why there's hype here. Let's get the problems out of the way first. The whole grainy trap beat and the very heavily slightly auto-tuned vocal production, it doesn't really sound good, especially with those vocal samples and the leaden beat, especially when there's a pretty good piano line there. Just the mixing and mastering sounds pretty cheap. And for as vivid and heartfelt as the storytelling feels on the second verse, a return to more flexing and the odd giggle he interjects kind of kills any larger sense of atmosphere on the third verse. That said, the hook is good, and the more melodic flow is pretty sticky, and I won't deny that he's got a knack for enough detail in order to keep this interesting. You can definitely tell this is an older song only getting exposure now thanks to his higher charting song, but this is intriguing. But before we hear any more, number 91, On My Way to You by Cody Johnson.
Saw you smile, every highway, every heartbreak, every mountain, every mile.
Well, this is awkward. See, I've actually reviewed Texas act Cody Johnson before, back in 2016 when I was on vacation, and I didn't really like much of what I heard. Part of this was the fact that I was listening to Cody Jinx around the same time, who is just on a different level when it comes to Cody's, but a lot of his production and the writing didn't stand out all that much, and when it did, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And yet, lo and behold, he signed a joint deal with Warner Nashville that allowed him to keep a lot of creative control and his own independent label, and now he's got a single riding up a really big album release. And yet, while I'm still not really wowed to go and review the album, there's a lot of quality here, mostly in terms of production that knows how to add a lot of rich pedal steel and fiddle against some real organic warmth. And yet, I don't know, the writing just feels a little bit undercooked for this brand of long-lost love song, and I'm still not sure how much the electric guitars come crashing in. I'm not sure it earns it. It's still a really good song, and I'm happy he's getting success with these sort of tracks. It promises a lot going forward, so check it out, but I don't know. I want to see what comes next. Number 83, F&N by Future.
How do I dress here? Make my flesh here. Soon as I roll up, put my doors up, go ahead, pull up, put a few O's up. Let's go.
And now we're back to Future, who informs us all that he's got so many white bitches, Ku Klux Klan, amidst a lot of gunplay on a swampy beat. But you know what points to him? Said beat does pick up a little bit more momentum when we get a lot of watery fragments barely passing as a melody as he talks about killing people on cruise ships. I think where I struggle with this song, and indeed so much of The Wizard, is how Future sells all this murderous intent with a sort of empty drone that doesn't really capture any sort of concrete menace, especially with how it's juxtaposed with references to Ray J in his lyrics. So yeah, it's better than Call a Coroner, but only just barely. Number 81, Pure Water by DJ Mustard and Migos.
You got the cab but can't afford them. Cash. You got the bad but can't afford them.
So for starters, it looks like DJ Mustard is trying to just rebrand himself as a Mustard as he recruited Migos for the push. And seriously, if there was a time to do this, it was the summer of 2014, not the winter of 2019, where if you weren't reading the liner notes of LMA's debut, you wouldn't know or care what the hell DJ Mustard's been doing. And yet to my absolute disbelief, I kinda like this, and I'm struggling to nail down how and why. I think a lot of it comes from that shrill vocal sample that DJ Mustard twists into a hook with just enough momentum to keep Migos on tempo, along with a more aggressive bass beat. Now, granted, what Migos actually do with it is questionable. The whole "I'm not from Canada, but I see a lot of tings" line from Quavo would be kind of embarrassing if Takeoff didn't just mimic something similar in his verse. And beyond that, it's a lot of flexing that doesn't really add up to much, although Quavo did find time to mention how he's going to be dismantling your bitch. And yet, if you can forget all of that, there is kind of a groove to this in the same way that I like Taste from last year, and I can see this being a hit. It's not great by any stretch, but honestly, coming from DJ Mustard and Migos, not bad either. Number 79, Rocket Ship by Future.
Bust the pills down in the kitchen, bitch. Yeah. Cooking cocoa, water, whip that shit. Yeah. Pull the boat up, we want all the bricks. Yeah.
And we're back to Future again. Really, what do I even say about a fragment like this? Barely any distinctive melody until we get one verse where it gets drowned behind that watery rattle, a lumpy bass and trap beat, and absolutely nothing worth mentioning except more drug references, because who else are you really buying the activists for, Future? In other words, utterly forgettable, so let's move on to number 76, Temptation by Future.
Top Gun is on vacation, yeah. I'm not trying to hurt nobody. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, I referenced it in my review, I'll say it again. The biggest appeal to Future's material is succumbing to the temptation for a nihilistic stupor. So when you have yet another desaturated clunker that actively samples his worst album and only barely disguises the Ty Dolla $ign imitation on the post-chorus, where he's trying to fight temptation amidst on an album and even a song where that's still clearly not happening as he's still very much on drugs and the girl is giving him a head like a tumor? Yeah, this doesn't work. I didn't even get to the ugly Post Malone-esque warble he tries on the verses. And if you're looking for more evidence that Future's getting left behind, yeah, this song. Number 71, Mixed Personalities by YNW Melly featuring Kanye West.
This girl, she got mixed personalities. One day she's happy, then she's mad at me.
So I'll freely admit I was worried about this song and the possibility of another disgusting Kanye verse, but instead we got this really goopy addition to the chorus with entirely too much auto-tune, especially with that falsetto post-chorus. But it's really this song where YNW Melly is exposed as yet another guy trying to rip off Young Thug's melodic contortions and switches from crooning to rapping, where he describes as mixed personalities and dealing with the girl who then dumped him that he wants back. And you know, I would be inclined to say this could work except for three things. Number one, the modulation in the content from line to line doesn't really reflect a difference between him and his alter ego, something at least Lil Yachty came close to getting somewhat right. Number two, it's more like the song has this ugly case of passive aggressiveness where he calls his girl his slime. That's a new term of endearment I've never heard before. And finally, I'm just really goddamn sick of Kanye's increasingly incomprehensible approach to mental instability, even when he passes it off here, especially when it feels like a cheap excuse just to be a total asshole, and especially when the hook implies the girl might be in similar straits, but on the second verse implies that she's the one who should be on meds. Yeah, the entire song feels really toxic and gross when you think about it, and pissed away any goodwill YNW Melly built with Murder on My Mind. Hope this song dies, and fast. Next, number 68, Secreto by Anuel AA and Karol G. Okay, honest question, why are we still giving Anuel AA traction on anything? Even for reggaeton, he seems completely uninteresting, and now with this song, we got him paired with Colombian artist Karol G, who actually has some critical acclaim, and yeah, I'm not impressed with this. The desaturated fragments of melody, the utterly standard reggaeton beat, the lack of any interesting harmonies, and the sort of lyrics that might read as kind of hyperbolic when translated. Seriously, Karol G mentions suicide if she can't be with him, but are sold with the flat stock cadence of somebody ordering a morning coffee. And as such, like with most reggaeton these days, I'm gonna forget this exists in record time. Let's move on. Number 65, Never Stop by Future.
It ain't gonna never stop. Tryna run $1 billion up until my ankle pop. Yeah.
Okay, only 2 more Future songs to get through, this being the opening track for The Wizard, and a single extended verse against a dreary bit of glittering ambiance, where the bragging starts to raise a lot more questions than it answers, providing an answer to any questions to begin with. Basically, it feels like a more money, more problems cut because people are envious but also ignoring him and that nothing matters to him, so why do you care? Why are you flexing again? Why are you lying and saying that you never lost a lady when Sierra very clearly left you when you were cheating? And given how many children you have, maybe it might have been for the best to let a few of those girls go. And if you're so goddamn rich, why are you getting your grandmother to serve your dope? But at the end of the day, like with all this album, it's a wash and forgettable bragging, and I can't see this sticking around. Which is also a similar case for number 47, First Off by Future featuring Travis Scott.
I put a Pedic water on, but I got options. PJ taking it off and I ain't stopping. Nah.
So I'll say this, I think it's intriguing that of the 2 Future songs with guest stars, only one hit the Hot 100. I guess Young Thug and Gunna don't have that same star power as of yet, but to be serious, this is an absolute waste of Travis Scott. All Future does with this is rattle through brand names and dreary boredom that gives me no incentive to care. And while I won't say on a content level that Travis Scott delivers much more, at least he tries to string together some decent basketball references and has a little bit more enthusiasm. I mean, it's not much compared to his best, but it's at least there. But you know what? I have to thank Future for this song. It's nice that he provided some adequate job training and support here for his replacement. Number 38, Keanu Reeves by Logic.
on the leads. They can't leave us hanging. No, not no more, best believe. Yeah, that shit is banging. Bobby killed it with no time to grieve.
So I said on Twitter several months back that I did not want to ever hear Logic on trap beats, and I knew it was inevitable because he concluded his Young Sinatra series, which at least put him on production that could flatter his vocal tone, but that didn't mean I was looking forward to getting proven wrong. And sure enough, against a washed out melodic loop, we got Logic bragging about how great he is with a flow that once again owes way too much to J. Cole and Kendrick. And sure, at least he's trying harder than Future, I'll give him that, but maybe it's a really stupid idea to undercut the emotional undercurrent of your Suicide Hotline song by making an explicit reference and pun your car doors. Hell, he spent all of everybody talking about being biracial and taking it very seriously, and now he passes it off like a cheap joke on his first verse, where not only is he too late to the party, but it retroactively hurts a project that probably picked up resonance for somebody. Trying to own your own meme kills it, dude. And when you try to get preachy on the second verse, it just proves how transparent your attempt to grab control of the narrative really is. So yeah, the flow might be good, but the humor is forced as all hell, and I'm still not on board with this. Logic, I don't want to hear this. Let's move on. Number 26, Middle Child by J. Cole.
I'm writing down names, I'm making a list, I'm checking it twice and I'm getting them hit. The real one's been dying, the fake ones is lit. The game is off balance, I'm back on my shit.
You know what's funny? Since I mostly avoided J. Cole conversation, that I'm coming to the song a lot later than I think a lot of people are. Hell, I heard Joe Budden rant about it on his podcast for a solid half hour, which seems to be doing a lot more to both undersell and oversell its impact, especially given that the creation didn't come out of the Dreamville sessions for that project at all. So yeah, I really had no idea what to expect with it, and I don't know, given that I kind of missed all the over-marketing, I'm still kind of underwhelmed by it. Sure, J. Cole's flow is really good, and the horns and the melodic loop are from T-minus, they're alright, but it doesn't feel like any shots were seriously taken, so much of a bunch of vague implications made in Kanye's general direction, even if they are deserved, an awkward flex about a watch that Drake bought him, and a bunch of references to rappers between generations where J. Cole's trying to be an intermediary. And yet, if he's trying to give something real, be it the arbiter who knows the final score, you'd think there'd be a little bit more force or punch in order to drive it home, establish his authority, or he'd be a little bit more willing to put names on wax beyond the younger crowd, or a little bit more willing to pick and choose which of the younger crowd that is worth elevating, because I sure as hell would not put Kodak Black in that category. But as a whole, I don't know, it's fine enough. It's surprisingly catchy, but I really don't see this sticking around for that long. Just a little too drab. Sorry. And finally, number 1, 7 Rings by Ariana Grande.
My gloss is poppin'. You like my hair? Gee, thanks. Just bought it. I see it. I like it. I want it. I got it.
You know, it's funny. I've been hearing both the praise and the backlash to this song long before I actually heard it, just like with J. Cole, with many fans and even fellow critics calling this one of Ariana Grande's worst ever songs. And thus coming to it now, you know, I've been worried about how quickly Ariana Grande is looking to turn around a new album after Sweetener, and songs like this are the big reason why. For one, it feels like a hodgepodge, grabbing its most recognizable interpolation from The Sound of Music, before we rattle through the list of flows as she flipped from folks spanning from Princess Nokia to Soulja Boy. And yet, when you couple it with a very bare-bones melody and trap beat, it can't help but feel a little rushed and undercooked, even after we got Thank You Next, which was also kind of rushed, at least to me. Now, granted, this is a flex anthem about buying expensive jewelry and flossing, and it's not like Ariana Grande hasn't made songs with this subject matter before. Look at Greedy. And hell, I'm not even against songs like this on principle, but I will say it feels a little bit rich for Ariana to assemble her retail therapy from a pileup of other ideas, because neither the shoes nor the samples will help flesh out your personality, Ariana, not helped by the haughty dismissiveness in a lot of her delivery, no matter how much natural charisma she has. So yeah, while this song is doing extremely well for now, and I absolutely like it more than Halsey's Without Me, 7 Rings is the sort of song I can see dying off really fast and being kind of anti-populist and souring a lot more folks on Ariana. And frankly, she can do better. So yeah, long week, and not a lot of it was good, unfortunately. The worst is actually pretty easy to point out. Mixed Personalities by YNW Melly and Kanye for gross production and lyrics that scream of undercooked hypocrisy, with dishonorable mention going to Call the Coroner by Future for just being asinine. Now for the best, You know what? It's close, but I think Cody Johnson just slips in for the top spot on the Way to You, with Pure Water by DJ Mustard and Migos as the honorable mention. What can I say? Even despite your expected Migos inanities, I think it's got potential to stick around. I like the song. Next week, the fallout from all this, and I predict there's going to be more than y'all are going to expect. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.